Hello, my name is Nicole Hartley Bradford, and this is the Radical Honesty Project, which is a personal project of mine that I've invited other people to join me in, where I, for 10 weeks, have devoted a 45-minute call space, and I go into the call space whether somebody joins me or not. And this is week 5. So far, nobody's arrived. It's the top of the hour. And I feel glad that nobody's arrived because I have a lot to report and I want to document about how my experimenting is going about radical honesty. And I'm remembering that when I first started reading Brad Blanton's book, Radical Honesty, both times that I started reading, all 3 times that I started reading it, I was really struck by what he said about radical honesty is really a way of getting into reality. And somehow I've become very interested in being in reality. I want to be in reality because I don't want to be escaping into fantasies, fantasies that are sunshine and rainbows or fantasies that are doom and gloom. I don't want to be escaping out of being with other beings, human and other than human beings. And I don't want to escape out of being with myself, with my physical body, with my energetic reality, with my emotions and my thoughts, my feelings. And in a way, it's all about radical honesty. And I've discovered this kind of ladder, in a way, down into reality that it's not just a one-dimensional ladder. It goes something like, the more honest I am about what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, the more I discover about how it's going in my energetic field, with parts that I bring forward, parts that I hold back, parts that I numb out, parts that come alive, and the differences between distinct parts. The more I notice about how I'm, about what's here to be honest with. And I got this distinction. I've been discovering how there's this kind of essential part of myself that I would call my being, that was in back of, almost behind my physical body, certainly in back of my personal space, that I could bring forward, and that bringing it forward with somebody else there was so scary. And I was crying, and I was working hard to bring this part forward. And the resistance was my fear of really being in contact. And I did this experiment with somebody else after I did it the first time with a space holder with whom I discovered this. And it wasn't like it was a brand new discovery. It just really came up in that process. And in a heart gym space with somebody else, I did it again, and what I discovered was there was this way that when I was grounded into Gaia, and my being was forward and in contact with another being, I started to feel this sadness. And I started to feel scared about my sadness because I was scared it would be interpreted as me being a victim. And when I used my fear that that would happen to really navigate into this pure sadness, I started to feel fear again And I realized that that was because I felt this anger. And there was this upwelling of anger about how it is on planet Earth right now, with so much dishonesty happening, so much being missed about this delicious experience of being in contact with another being. I don't even, no, that's not true. I have an inkling of what it is to be in contact with other than human life forms and other than human beings. Like, I have the experience of having, as a child, been in contact with a mountain that was outside of the city I grew up in. And there was this, it was this distinct being, this mountain that I was compelled to be near, be on, to climb up, to reach the top of, to see what I could see and have this experience of a mountain climber. And so I have an inkling of these being different kinds of being to being contact that's possible. And this sadness and anger about how I've gone without it, and how I have lived in a version of reality that in which I would choose to go without it in order to fit in order to survive. And I just have this slim wisp of joy that I did survive, and that I have come to this day, right here, right now. I'm having goosebumps on my arms, where I can be, it's like I'm building some kind of inner structure or inner map of what the reality is that I can be in touch within myself, and then from there how I can be in touch with other beings, including this being Gaia that I ground into. And that more and more I discover I am a appendage of, oh, that sounds like such a derogatory word. Uh, and even appendage wouldn't be accurate, because an appendage is something that sticks out from something, whereas yes, physically my body kind of sticks out from the earth, but it also, Gaia is the air, Gaia is the atmosphere, Gaia, the personal bubble of space, or the personal, I want to personify Gaia, yet it's hard not to when I'm relating to this entity, to not kind of make it somehow personal, or morphagize it like a human personal. And yet there's this way that, like, the vector of Nicole with her center and her physical body and her energetic body and her mental body and her personal bubble of space, and outside the bubble is everything and everyone else. Inside the bubble is Nicole, and inside and outside is Gaia. And then Gaia has a physical body and a dense physical body, and then a less dense, still physical body, because the atmosphere that Gaia is enveloped, that Gaia's dense physical body is enveloped by, the surface of the earth is like the surface of my body. And then there's this energetic, and it still has physicalness to it, because there's oxygen, and there's carbon and dioxide, and there's nitrogen, there's particles. Just because they're invisible doesn't mean they're not physical. Invisible to my eyes. And then there's the atmosphere of Gaia, which is very similar to my personal bubble of space. So it's no wonder there becomes this relating to Gaia as human, the way maybe the mites on my skin might relate to themselves as part of me, if they have a mental way of relating with me at all. So yeah, what I did just there was I somehow chose to slow down. I got the possibility to slow down, and I slowed down, and this has also become part of my experiment. I've discovered that when I'm honest, I want to slow down. And there's a way that I catch up with myself somehow. It's as if when I'm energetically moving faster than the speed of presence, of contact. Yeah, these parts of me get behind. And I guess this might be why when I did slow down in the space with the person that I was talking about, that I did the experiment of bringing myself forward. It's like I could come forward. It's like when I'm in a fast car and I'm pinned against the back of the car and I'm speeding down and slowing down and speeding up. And when I kind of take the wheel and take the accelerator and the brake back, I go at the pace that I want, and then my being can come forward, make contact. I want to open the Radical Honesty book where the bookmark is in the introduction. I don't remember where I left off. I'm going to start here. It's a repeating a little bit, but it's close to the bottom of page 2. Oh, now I remember. I said I was a third of the way, or 2/3 of the way down page 3. Yeah. Okay, this is where I'll start. And this is Brad talking about who he works with in his psychology practice, sociology practice. He's not a psychologist, psychiatric. He's not a psychiatrist, he's a psychologist. I work mostly with garden variety neurotics, average, basically healthy people who are anxious or depressed or both. Often these general states of being, anxiety or depression, are accompanied by somatic discomforts and diseases such as skin rashes, ulcers, lower back pain, spastic colitis, allergies, high blood pressure, and insomnia, or by recurring problems in relationships, on the job, or in the family. When therapy he delivers, works, the somatic ills disappear or decrease in intensity. Anxiety and depression as steady states go away, and people take responsibility for making their relationships, professional lives, and creative powers work. Taking responsibility means a person no longer blames outside circumstances or other people or past events for the conditions of his own life. Both the bodily ills and the steady, unwanted emotional states go away because of a learning that takes place. And that learning always involves letting up on the demand that the world, including the demander, be other than what it is. Just pausing there, like the demander, he's not specifying, like the world or the demander being anybody else than me. Yeah, this is how I relate to this more radical level of responsibility, where I take responsibility for how much responsibility is happening. And when I see that someone else isn't taking responsibility, I don't take it for them, but I might take responsibility by being honest, by saying something like, I feel mad because I see you kind of going into the past, blaming things that happened in the past for how you are here and now. And I feel mad because I don't think you have any power if you go in the past. I think you have power if you are present and you choose now, here, about what you want to create, how you want to be. And I get that how people are is consequences of things that happened in the past. And I'm not asking you to get over it or pretend that you're a different way to how you are. And I am inviting you to be radically honest. And my question would be, what do you want right now? If you're radically honest, what do you want right now? And for the past to be different isn't an answer, it's a fantasy. Yeah. Learning always involves letting up on the demand that the world, including the demander, letting up on the demand that the world, including the demander, be other than what it is. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about, this discovery of like when I'm radically honest about my thoughts and my feelings, then I can be more radically honest about what is, what it, what me, what the demander is, and what the world is. Therapy is over when a person stops incessantly demanding that other people be different from what they are, forgives his or her parents and other begrudged former intimates, reclaims the power to make life work, and takes responsibility for doing so. So where am I in that? Forgives her parents and other begrudged former intimates. This is where the I resent you experiment comes in. Because while I'm still resenting people, while that resentment is still what is in me, I actually cannot become this, what he's talking about. This kind of, this demand that other people be different, this demand that I be different. It doesn't happen. It's like forgiveness isn't what comes first. Radical honesty comes first. And then the consequence of being radically honest, especially about my resentments, changes what is inside me. And as I found out, has also consequences in the other person, even though that's not what I'm doing it for necessarily. I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it for myself and the other person in that I want to be radically honest so that I can release these resentments or have them not be in here. And it's a risk because I don't know how it's going to go with the other person. And I'm going to do it how it goes or not with the other person. So this is where the selfishness is. And there's a way that it's also a selfishness that has the possibility for mutual benefit, because if how I can be while I'm revealing these resentments so that I can get to the appreciations and also reveal those, it's the it's the best I've got when it comes to really being the source of some kind of transformation that starts with me and in me, but can contage to the other person. What comes to mind next is an experiment I did at a gathering I was at on the weekend, where there was a person there who had been very friendly, and we'd had a cool chat, and then they stopped me again to check in. So they'd sat down with me, or stood with me, I think 3 or maybe 4 times before I noticed that they stopped doing it. Like it looked like they were ignoring me when they went by, and then they would see me, and like I'd see they'd see me, and they like almost keep looking for somebody to make contact with. And I noticed this fear, and I was like, okay, what am I scared of? And I was like, wow, I'm scared that they have a story about me that is creating this wall. And I I decided to check out my story. And it was more like, I have a story that you've changed your mind about me as a person you want to be in contact with. And they, when I went to speak to them about it, I noticed that they showed all the signs of being pretty overwhelmed. And I was scared to start a conversation in case it was more overwhelming. So I said something like, I do have a few minutes. I want to check something out with you. And they told me that they didn't have a few minutes for that. But they might later, and that they would come to me when and if they did. And so I just said, okay, so what's clear to me is that you want to hear what I have to say, and you want to be the person who initiates hearing it. And so I will leave it with you, and I will not approach you again. I will wait for you to approach me. Okay. And then I said, I feel scared that you won't approach me, and that, yeah, this is the selfish part. Like I don't think I said this, but it's so familiar. I really want this. I want to check out the story I have about you, because I want to check out reality, and I don't have access to the reality inside you. Though I'm realizing that through my intuition and my scanners, I can get some of the reality, but I can't necessarily get it all. I cannot read minds. This is really the thoughts part. And wow, I just flashed on how often I and other people assume what someone's thinking, assume what someone's feeling, and where the feeling is coming from. This is really what I don't want to do anymore. I don't want to be assuming, and yet I'm stuck when I don't hear from the person. There's all this room to assume, and to not assume. Now there's a skill to learn to let the void of communication about what someone's feeling or thinking be empty, and not try to fill it myself with my worst case scenarios, which is often what I fill it with. Okay, reading on page 4. Psychotherapy doesn't always work. My estimate is that about a third of the time the results are good to adequate. About a third of the clients make a few half-assed changes, and at least a third of the folks who see me don't get any good out of the therapy that's worth mentioning. Very few people suffer any damage in therapy, since it is hard to do damage, as hard to do damage as it is to help. It's interesting that he says that, because I've heard from a lot of people that this thing, it did more harm than good. And what I'm guessing they mean is that it brought up a lot of feelings, and it didn't change how much feelings there are in me to have brought up. This is certainly the case for me. I turned often to friends, partners, other adults, my parents, for space holding. And based on how the space holding went, or the space went with me partly holding it too, maybe not taking responsibility that I was actually holding the space also, putting the responsibility on the other person to hold the space, and then ended the space, or had the other person end the space, and it just seemed like things had got worse. And yet I do now, I can see that they didn't do damage. They did, damage happened. A mess was made in our relational space. Who did it? It's hard to say, really. That would be something that would need to be unpacked by each person, remembering as best they can that space. But to actually do more damage is, I think, hard, especially if the therapist or the space holder has the intention to love and help. He goes on to say, I have seen a lot of failure and a lot of success. This book is an attempt to say what works when it works. When therapy works, the result is an experience of well-being, wholeness, being whole. This book is about getting there. Do I feel not whole? It's not so much that. I think in a way, I've had a pretty consistent sense of myself as whole. What I had that might be different is this kind of steady, unwanted emotional state, where it was more of a attitude, had emotions in it, but it was more of a attitude that had stories in it, at least kind of prevalent, recurring stories, which are, I'm alone, I have to do it myself. People love me, but they don't want to be with me. And people who used to love me changed their minds about me, and it's all my fault. And I can do something about it, but I don't know what it is. And I have to figure it out. Yeah, this is the demand on myself, was I have to figure out how to fix this. Okay, so where does stress come from is the next heading. And I go on because I see this on the next page. It's like how we should somehow fix it. Where does stress come from? People say modern life is stressful. Stress is not a characteristic of life or times, but of people. Stress does not come from the environment. It comes from the mind of the individual under stress. I'm just flashing to children, and I'm thinking, is there such thing as a child where they're in relating with someone who's in their environment, doesn't choose to think that they are under stress from the experience of being put under stress? In any case, I'm a grown-up, and you're probably a grown-up, so let's talk about grown-ups. Physical grown-ups. We make certain assumptions about the world and we become attached to those assumptions. We suffer from thinking. We worked too hard to learn our ideas about the world to give them up. Like poker players who have already lost too much, we desperately double the bet in hopes of forcing fate to give us a good card. Wow. We think about things too much and too seriously, and we suffer a great deal from trying to make the world match our thinking. Agree with us? We complain about how the world fails to live up to our expectations. We think about how life doesn't live up to its billing, and how it should, and how it is rotten that it doesn't, and how we should somehow fix it. Many people think themselves to death. I suppose they might be people who don't think themselves to death but die anyway. In order to survive, whoa, wait a minute. What if thinking you have to die, that you will die, is another way of thinking yourself to death? I don't want to get into fantasies of immortality. And my mind does go to like ancient legends of humans that lived for hundreds of years. In order to survive, we have to apply what we have learned from experience. But it is equally true that in order to thrive, in order to stay alive, we have to overcome continually what we have previously learned. If we don't somehow get rescued from our assumptions about life, they devour us. Rescue involves recognizing that the assumptions we so stubbornly cling to as truths are, in fact, decisions we have made about what should be true based on past experiences. This is what I love about possibility management. And where Brad calls this rescuing, I would say possibility management does the closest thing to rescuing without actually rescuing, which is to put possibilities in front of me, some that I've had an inkling of myself, some that I have not, in the form of distinctions and maps. So maps in a way are collections of distinctions and how the distinctions kind of fit together, and tools so that I can try things, and processes so that I can try things to really cause this consequence that he's talking about, noticing my assumptions, noticing my thinking, noticing this prison I've got that I built for myself and that I can get out of myself. I'm going to close the space, the recorded space here. It's been about half an hour. And I'm going to keep reading and drink my tea and kind of, in a way, kind of close the bubble of, oh, and let me say something else about this. Something I've discovered about myself is there's a part of me, and using possibility management distinctions, I would say it's my gremlin. My gremlin, my box also, I think. This is interesting. It's maybe my box. My box wants to be famous. My box wants to be seen. It wants attention. It wants kudos. It wants credit. It wants money. It wants status. It wants, and this is where I start to wonder which part is which. And also there's something about my being that wants to be seen, that wants to shine. And shining is just visible. And it doesn't want not to shine. So it's almost like by default, that means it wants to be visible. My gremlin is guarding, guarding my box, who I think I am, against the kickback that would come from being very visible. But what I discovered about it is that I can use that part of me. I can use this consciously. I can choose it in order to hold myself more accountable by making myself visible to people who I would project that they would judge me for not doing what I said I would do. And this is part of why I am making this project visible, by inviting people to it, and by, even when they don't come, recording and sending it out in the world. I think I saw that last time I was on my YouTube channel that something like 8 people had viewed the video. I don't know if they viewed it to the end, but and this really comes from another selfish part, which I sense is more my purpose for being alive, because it's bigger than just me. It's not bigger than what I want for other people. I want other people to really become how Brad is describing here, that they go in and there's this anxiety and depression and like kind of neuroticism, and they come out with this result of being able to, where is it? I don't see it again. Oh yeah, have these results where they take responsibility. They're different from how they were. They've stopped this incessant demand that other people be different from what they are, forgiven their parents and other begrudged former intimates, and reclaim the power to make life work and take responsibility for doing so. I had a lot of conversations on the weekend with a new friend who is more of a fatalist or a determinist. Like, I don't even remember what the categories are, but one that's like, it's inedible. Like, you don't actually have free will. It's determined by your nature how it goes, and you don't actually choose. And yet it's in my nature to do the things that give me more access to choice. It's hard to know if I'm choosing or not, but in any case, something I just said made me think about this. And the consequences I want to exist really depend on how other people respond to me. So that do I choose that? Hard to know. We did say a few times there's this thing that I got in grade 11 chemistry, where the chemistry teacher, Mr. Quinn, said to us one day, there's nothing that can disprove or prove, or I'll go with the disprove, that you are not a speck in space believing you were having this experience. And that it's all you. It's all you. And there's the spiritual kind of woo-woo people that go with this in that we're all one. It's like, okay, but how are we all one? Because when I'm over here looking that way, I can see that stuff. When you're over here looking this way, you can see this stuff. If you don't have a Zoom room, you can see both directions. In any case, so that's one, and that's something else. What you're seeing, what I'm seeing, are two different things, two different perspectives. So how is it that we are one when there are different perspectives, when there are different ways of being human? In any case, back to my selfishness, is that part of my purpose for making myself visible, what I'm up to visible, my experimenting visible, it's kind of like this fishing net that I put out in the world in hopes of catching the fish that also want to do this, be on this side of the net, to create spaces where ever more radical honesty is happening about thoughts, feelings, the experience of what is in myself, and the honest, radically honest sharing of what is and what is, so as to get to this part where reclaiming the power to make life work and take responsibility for doing it. And what when I'm radically honest, what I think works for me from my lived experience is living in a home with a kitchen with at least 3, 4, 5 other people, where the home is also close to the homes of, or the living spaces of, I don't know how many other people. I think there's a maximum where it stops working so well because people can't maintain the intimacy of the relational spaces and keep it rolling and growing as easily. But I want to be in, I call it a Gaian eco village with about 120 to 150 people, maybe a bit less, because each of us would be also connected to people who lived in nearby villages or far away villages for as long as we can do digital connecting. But I suspect that will not last so long because of how I see things going in the world. And I want to live like that. I want to experience what it is to live like that. And I want to experience what I want once I live like that. Because right now there's this kind of overwhelming, no, this powerful anger and sadness and fear and joy in me that drive me in this direction, that I want life to work. I think it will work like this, so I want to create that. And I'm taking responsibility for it as best I can. And it seems like the Earth's Coincidence Control Office thinks I'm interesting enough that it's giving me people to relate with. And more of those people are in person. And here we are. Today on Thursday, July 4th, 9:43 a.m. Pacific time on the west coast of Canada. And here you are with past me when you're watching this, if you've watched it to the end. I hope that you really do get in touch if this is what you want. And if you're someone who's watching it for some other reason, why would you do that? I wonder. Maybe nobody's watching it with another reason or purpose. Yeah, I feel sad to think that someone might be watching it with not a purpose of learning to be more radically honest yourself. Just because I think it works. I think it really does work to be radically honest and with this selfish purpose of becoming unburdened of these unwanted emotional states, these results in relational spaces that Brad talks about. You know, these anxiety, depression accompanied by somatic discomforts and diseases, rashes, ulcers, lower back pain. I get that one, lower back pain. Spastic colitis, allergies. I'm so blessed. I don't have any of these apart from the back pain. High blood pressure, insomnia, or by recurring problems in relationships. That I have had. On the job, yes. I work for myself. I work for Gaia because of the problems I have when I do jobs for other people. Though there are times when I love doing jobs other people give me because I'm like, what can I do? What can I do to contribute? Wee, fun stuff. Or in the family. Yeah. Yeah. And to have this, the therapeutic effect of radical honesty really work so that these ills disappear or decrease in intensity and these anxious, depressed states go away, and people don't need to take as much drugs or I don't know, have as much mindless sex or just hate themselves and hate other people. All right, I'm ending there. Whoever you are, I can honestly say I care about you. I care about how it goes for you. I care about the level of authentic freedom you have, not freedom granted by some external authority, but freedom that you created for yourself, chose for yourself, and manifested for yourself. Like you made life work how you want it to be, and that you're getting fed. You're responsible for feeding your bodies, your physical body, giving it the movement, the food, the water, the sunshine, the making sure it gets the touch that it craves. And your energetic bodies, you're getting to hear beautiful music and go at your own time and your own pace, and you're not like, I have to rush, or somebody else is making me rush, so I have to rush. And that you're getting, yeah, your mind is getting all this delicious stories and figuring things out, and yeah, discovering how things work and being like, wow, just amazed and inspired in your mental body. And that your sense of purpose is like, yeah, this is what I was made for. This is why I exist, is to create something astonishingly beautiful. Yeah, I care. I care about you getting to have that in your life. You can believe me or not. Bye for now.